Hey, hope you saw this marvelous story of cooperation that appeared in the news. This Russian research vessel that was down in Antarctica, the freezing part of the world. You know how the cold the world is right now. It gets stuck in massive ice floes to where it can't move. Got 52 passengers who paid their way just to go down there, and then you had a crew of about 20, and they were stuck. Now, they weren't in immediate danger. They had food, and they had enough supplies to get them through several weeks, and they could helicopter goods in. So they tried to get them out. The Russians couldn't do it. Then a Chinese cutter tried to work its way in, and also a Chinese helicopter tried to land to evacuate these folks. That couldn't get in. The Australians sent up a cutter and also had helicopters. The Americans then set up cutters also in a united effort. So you have the Chinese, you got the Russians, you got the Americans, and you got the Australians all cooperating to try to get these folks off the ship. Finally, I think an American ship is on its way there now to try to get the crew. The 52 passengers were able to be evacuated by helicopter in a Chinese helicopter, then onto a Russian, onto an Australian cutter, and the American cutter is trying to get through to get the crew off, and they're going to do it. But look at the confrontation that goes on in this country today, let alone the rest of the world, let alone the Middle East and what's happening over in the Far East, where you got the Chinese and the Japanese and the Americans all fighting over a handful of rocks. Some little islands in the Pacific have no value, no minerals there, nobody lives on them. They're talking about fighting each other over that. Look at what's happening with the Israelis and the tensions building up now with Iran. And then you go to Congress, where they don't even talk to each other. You got the Republicans, rather the Republicans and the Demo don'ts is what you have. Neither side will communicate, will in good faith negotiate. Not only are they the opponent philosophically, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, the other side are the bad guys. They're the enemy. There's someone you want to stomp and beat in the next election at whatever cost. You see, there is no cooperation of any kind whatsoever. The government was shut down for a couple of weeks this year, cost us was some $600 million because of the shutdown. We just can't seem to get it together. And yet, when this crisis takes place, in a cooperative effort between 4 different nations, they get together. They look after their interest of saving these people and did a marvelous job of doing so. Why can't they do that in Washington, D.C.? Look, you can keep your core values, you can keep your philosophy, you can keep your attitudes towards social issues or whatever, and still sit down and talk and communicate and find some middle ground. Ronald Reagan and the Democratic Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, were able to do it. We had Newt Gingrich trying to impeach Bill Clinton. And Clinton said, look, at least we got to keep the government going. They would talk 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Clinton would call up Gingrich, fighting tooth and nail, yet they still cooperated in trying to find some middle ground. So we've seen political enemies do that in the past and find a way to solve problems. But they can't do it on a regular basis in Washington, D.C. today. 2014, you better have an awfully good reason to vote for any incumbent who's running for public office in 2014. You better know that person, that congressman, that senator, have a chance to talk to them. Get your comfort level there, because based on where we're going, this country's got some huge problems. And yet, at the bottom of the world, where countries that often don't get along, China, United States, you've got these countries, you've got Australia coming in, you've got the Russians. China and Russia don't get along that well, that we don't get along with those sides. They solved a problem by putting their differences aside to help these people. We can do so in Washington. We can do so in the rest of the world. It just takes a commitment to try to at least listen to the other side and find a middle ground. That's what we try to do in this show, make some common sense out of these issues that certainly aren't that complicated. They seem to be, thank goodness for what happened up in Antarctica at the bottom of the world. We'll be right back.